So Gronk retired, we think, sort of, kind of, absolutely, we're not sure. Even his agent Drew Rosenhaus said, if Tom Brady calls, he'll listen. I worked with Gronk briefly at Fox. And generally, I have a pretty good idea of what people are like before they enter a building. Gronk was surprisingly serious off air, incredibly candid, and one of the things that was so clear about Gronk off the air, I'm not sure I've ever met a professional athlete that had that kind of contagious personality. He is virtually impossible not to like. I could say that about 3 people maybe in my life. You put Gronk in a room, men, women, old, young, doesn't matter. Gronk is maybe the most likable professional athlete I've ever met. He's more serious than you think. He's more of a thinker than you think. And though I work with him briefly, fascinating guy from an incredible family. There's been 5 great tight ends in my life. Kellen Winslow, Shannon Sharp, Tony Gonzalez, Gronk, and Travis Kelce. Those are the 5 best tight ends in my life. Now, there's been a lot of good tight ends. Jimmy Graham had a few good years. Dave Casper for years with the Raiders. The late Aaron Hernandez was a matchup nightmare. But, you know, one of the interesting things about those tight ends, they all did things differently. Think about this with Gronk. Is every great football coach has a hole. Pete Carroll, it's offense. Belichick, it's drafting. There's an argument to be made that Gronk is the last great offensive player Bill Belichick and the Patriots have drafted. I mean, there's been a couple of linemen that have hit. There's been some nice running backs. I like Damian Harris. Nate Solder from Colorado, a first-round tackle, was a good player, never great. James White, more of a receiving running back than a running back, also very complimentary. Belichick's resume is clear. He was a bad drafter on currently the most important side of the ball. Gronk is the last great player Belichick drafted. Remember, he had some injuries, played at a basketball school, Arizona. That when you look back at Belichick, and I've made this argument before, is that the NFL has pivoted from a defensive league my entire childhood to an offensive league in the last 6 to 7 years. Rules, can't hit anybody. Is that now that Belichick is struggling without Brady, and now that Belichick clearly struggled the last 10 years of drafting, isn't there an argument to be made that if Andy Reid coaches for 6 more years, maybe 7, and wins 2 Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes, that there will not be this gap of Belichick is the greatest coach ever and Andy Reid's in this pool of 8 to 10 other guys? That because of rule changes, we will look at Andy Reid, his last 10 years, of being superior to Belichick's last 10 if he stays around for a half decade more. Sometimes you're as good of what a sport allows. And I think you look at Brady's departure and the inability for New England to draft offensive skill people. Look it up. Think about how long Gronk has played. Is he the last great offensive skill player drafted by the Patriots? Great, not good, great. I think he is.